Fellow Toastmasters and Mr. Toastmaster, I wanted to share this slice of history that shocked me when I found out about this a couple years ago. And if you don't already know about this part of history, I'm going to guess you're going to be shocked too. I'm going to start with the end of World War II. Returning servicemen were very happy to come home, start their lives, and start their families. We had an amazing economic boom in the late 40s and 50s for many reasons. And one reason is because of the GI Bill. It gave tuition benefits to the returning servicemen, gave them unemployment benefits, and what the focus of my talk is tonight, it gave them low interest mortgage loans to buy homes. And this was very important because there was a housing shortage after World War II. All these young men starting their own households. As a response, the government built a lot of housing in cities. But what really made the difference is that private developers figured out how to mass produce houses. And that's what they did. They mass produced houses. A new term was coined, suburbia. The first and most famous of these housing developments, you may have heard of it, is Levittown in New York. A developer took a potato farm on Long Island and converted it into 17,000 new homes in a matter of a few years. These homes were very affordable. As one woman who lived in Levittown recalled, when they were looking to start a household, they could have gotten an apartment in the Bronx for $100 to $150 a month, or they could have gotten a brand new home with brand new appliances on Long Island for just $65 a month. So it was a huge benefit to be able to buy these homes and get out of the city. All of this was made possible not only by the developers, we have to give them credit, but also to the post-World War II GI Bill. It allowed for those low interest mortgage loans to buy the homes. It afforded college tuition so that people had good jobs. All of this led to economic security and the famous post-World War II baby boom. All taken together, a middle class was created pretty much out of thin air. You know, as Russell talked about in his speech, that middle class wasn't present before. So that World War II GI Bill enabled all of this to happen. I am a post-World War II baby boomer, and this is me in 1960. My father fought in World War II. He came home, he married his high school sweetheart, he had 3 children, and in 1955, he bought a house in a nice neighborhood using the GI Bill. As a result, I went to great K-12 schools. I got a college education. I had lots of job opportunities, and I myself bought a home. And if that weren't enough, 6 months before my mom died, she sold the family home for $800,000, and this became inheritance for me and my sisters. This all sounds pretty great, does it not? We basically created a middle class out of nothing on the backs of the Great Depression and World War II. We created all this abundance. So what is so shocking in our history? What is wrong with this picture? And perhaps you would have guessed it by now, given the events of the last month. African-American soldiers had tremendous obstacles toward using the GI Bill. And I'm just going to talk about one of them, which was the low interest mortgage loans. This was unbelievable to me because I now am sometimes serving as an expert witness on court cases around housing discrimination. And it just was shocking to me that back after World War II, that there was state-sanctioned discrimination. And what they said is that these loans could only be used in segregated neighborhoods. And I want to read to you the actual language from the Fair Housing Administration handbook that was in effect from 1945 to 1968. If a neighborhood is to retain stability, it is necessary that property shall continue to be occupied by the same social and racial classes, that there needs to be protection against infiltration by inharmonious racial or nationality groups. So this was state-sanctioned discrimination, and it continued until 1968. 1968, which is in my lifetime, not that long ago. Finally, Lyndon Johnson passed the Fair Housing Act that eliminated all bias from housing, any racial bias from housing. And the government was to uphold that. Now, of course, just because you pass laws does not mean that that ends discrimination. There was still plenty of discrimination by private persons. I think it's obvious that today we are still seeing the effects of this discrimination. It wasn't just that the Black veterans were disadvantaged, but their children and their children's children were disadvantaged. They didn't have the opportunity of the wealth transfer that I had. They didn't have the opportunity of the good schools and the good jobs and the college education and so on. And this chart shows you that today, whites have a net worth 11 times the value of Black households. So it shows you this continued disparity from the discrimination back after World War II. It just makes me sad that we had this huge opportunity after World War II. We could have had integrated neighborhoods. We could have had abundance and refreshments for all races. But that's not what happened. And so now the African people of color are paying that price, and we as a society are paying that price. There's an excellent book about this information if you want to go into more detail. But I just wanted to make sure, in honor of Black Lives Matter, that I could share this information with my fellow Toastmasters. Mr. Toastmaster.